welcome back to the Our Moment Literary Podcast. It's your host, Exquisite Williams, and we are going to finally be getting into a breakdown of part 3. So we are joined once again by the myth, the legend, Deven, who joined us last time. And Deven, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, hi. Welcome back. And I'm also glad to be back. Fun times. To talk about Legendborn.
Yes. Yeah. How have you been since we talked about part 2?
Oh my God, school has been tearing me to shreds, but it's okay. Submitted my 2 10-page essays.
Oh wow!
And I have another one due next Friday. So.
But you're making it, and you got here, so it's
surviving.
Good. But yeah, so we're gonna be talking about part 3. Part 3 is called Root. Can you give us a little like a snippet of where we left off in part 1? I mean, part 2.
Okay, part 2. Hold on, let me look at the last page because that will absolutely catch me up. What is it? Patricia. Okay, yeah, so Patricia is like, no, finally Bree is like, okay, Patricia, I want to know more about my mom and my heritage. And Patricia's like, well, I can't do that, but I can take you through my heritage, my people, because Root is like, they're borrowing the energy. Mm-hmm. They're like, the energy belongs to the dead. We're just using it for a short time.
We ask for permission.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's where we live off. And it kind of ends on this kind of cliffhanger. Not really. They're in the graveyard. And Patricia grabs her and she takes her on a spirit walk. And what happens on the spirit walk?
So... Oh my God, wait, did I jot down what the grandma's name was?
So basically Patricia takes her to see her ancestors who, and to see a memory. And Bree's like, can they see me? And Patricia's like, no, they can't see you, but we're about to see this memory, what Root can do. And she's like, there is a woman that is a healer. I think her name is Abby. No, Mary. Abby is who is hurt. Because Abby, we're back in like the 1800s, the slavery era, and Abby has been whooped.
Yeah.
And they're like, hold on, Abby, Mary's coming, and Mary gets there, and Bree sees sees ether around the herbs.
Yeah.
And she sees that Mary is about to heal Abby. And she's like, what happened to her? And she's like, well, listen. And it turns out Abby had been beaten by a man named Carr. And they're like, Abby, we told you to stay away from them people. And she's like, oh, yikes, I know. But so Bree is like, she's angry. And Patricia's like, you just have to watch what happens. And then Patricia goes, and then Bree's like, Carr? I know that name. And then Patricia's like, yes, you do. His monument is on the campus. Like, we have a whole statue to him. And then Patricia's like, well, you just need to keep watching. Watch what happens. Look at the herbs. Because she's like, this is the heart of Rootcraft. She says, Rootcraft is protection from those who wish to harm us. And if they do, healing so that we can survive, resist, and thrive. That's kind of almost the opposite of, like, what ether is. Like, technically they're doing it to fight off, but they're also using it for their own gain.
Yeah, it's more of a domination thing for them. Hence why they take it as opposed to borrow.
Mm-hmm. So, Mary calls her ancestors forth to help her heal Abby, but Bree is like, yo, she's still bleeding. She's not fully healed. And Patricia's like, the point is not to fully heal. But look, she's going to live. She's going to survive. She's not going to she's not going to die. And Bree's a little confused because she's seen William completely heal, like broken spines. Like, she's got a couple healing things from William. And Patricia is like, no, wild crafters borrow power from their ancestors in order to use the energy of the plants. The power is finite, so is the living energy of the plants. So it's one of those like give and take things, right? And so Bree's all shook. And she's like, look, she's not going to die from infection. She's not going to do all that. And then what happens?
Okay, so Patricia's ancestor, Louisa.
Oh, wait, this is when she finds out about the order. She asked her what she saw, and she's like, I saw the ether. She's like, whoa.
Oh, my God, that does happen. So Patricia's like, just going about her business. And Bree's like, oh, yeah, I see it there. She's like, see?
How you see this?
You see Root? And she's like, yeah. She's like, are you borrowing, like, the ancestral site? Like, are you asking them? But she's like, no, I don't have to ask anybody to see. I just see it.
And then she's like, wait, Bree, you keep saying these words. Who taught you these words? And Bree's like, the Order of the Round Table. And then Patricia says blood crafters. And she, like, jumps. Like, she was like, is this where you getting the... And then she goes, is that another word for Legendborn? And she's like, it's not just a word. Blood crafters don't borrow power from their ancestors. They definitely steal it, and they bind it to their bodies for generations and generations. And all magic comes with a price. Haha, we already know about the abatement, and we know about what Merlin did. So, And this is like... And then she literally says, I'm going to read it directly from the book. She says, colonizer magic that costs and takes. Many practitioners face demons. Many of us face evil. But from the moment their founders arrived, from the moment they stole native homelands, the order themselves gave the demons plenty to feed on. They reap what their magic sows, right? And then Louisa, who is Patricia's grandmother, looks at Bree in those horror movies, and they're like, nobody can see you. Yeah. And they make direct eye contact with you through like a two-way mirror, and it's like, how'd they know I was there? Yeah. And then Bree is like, I thought you said she couldn't see me.
And Patricia's like, she can't. What are you talking about?
And then Louise was like, I see you. And so she grabs Bree and takes her deeper into a memory. And Patricia's not around, and she's like, Louise. She's like, well, where am I? She's like asking about that, and Patricia's not there. And so then she turns to Louisa and she says, where are we? And Louisa's like, then we're not far from the same memory we were in, like the same place. Yeah. You need to ask, when are we? And then she's like, okay, when are we? And Patricia goes, 50 years from my time, when her grandmother was young. So now we're talking to Patricia's great grandmother era. It's 1815. And what does she show her here?
So she shows her this portal open up with these like demons, and they make notice of like the demon's eyes, and they're what specific?
No, you in the wrong.
I'm in the wrong. Ain't no way.
That happens after this. This is the birth.
Not the birth. Oh my! I must have read this in class. Oh,
God, no. Not you reading in class. We read this together. Okay, y'all, forgive Deven because he skipped ahead half a second because we see two different things. We'll get to that vision in a second. Baby. Yeah, okay, so we go back. I should have just said it. Louise is like, she comes in and then they're like, oh, we have to deliver this baby. There's a baby here. Look. These babies, Celia, Betty, and Catherine. She's like, whoa, how you know them? She's like, that's my mother's mother. She brought us here. And they're like, so they're helping deliver this baby, right? And the baby is born, and all the midwives, they scream. They're like, what is that? And she's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? They're like, look at his eyes. And she's like, what's wrong with his eyes? And then they tell her, we told you not to mess with that red-eyed devil, but you did, didn't you? And nothing good comes from a man you meet at a crossroads. And she's like, what's wrong with his eyes? And they're like, he has golden eyes. It's a crossroads child. And they're like, he's just a baby. And they're like, he may look like a baby. But that is not a baby.
That's now.
A demon. You need to get rid of it. It's a monster. And then so, boom, Celia, the world disappears. Celia grabs her back. And now we're at the one you said.
Okay, so now we're at that time. So this is around the time, I'm pretty sure when Bree's mom was
when Bree's mom was in college, yes.
And so Louisa brings her there, and it's, then we get, like, the demons popping up.
We meet Ruth first. Yeah. Ruth is Patricia, her
current descendant.
It's Patricia's sister that has passed away. And she's like, Ruth wanted to talk to you now. Lucy's like, Ruth wanted you here. I don't know why we're here.
Let me send you to the next one.
And we get to the portal, as you mentioned. Yep,
and it's bad. Like, we see multiple demons. They've got the eyes, the golden eyes.
The golden and the red eyes. Crazy.
And it starts to click for Bree. Mm-hmm. Like, those eyes look familiar.
They're looking real familiar.
And she's like, wait a minute.
And then she sees, like, a whole attack.
Yes.
On the people.
And she's like, okay, so stuff happened here.
And my mom was definitely, my mom was here. So she's, like, trying to put two and two together. And then she wakes up. And Patricia's like, oh, my God. are you okay? And then she's like, you have a sister named Ruth, and I saw her. And she's like, yeah, I did. She'd been passed away. She's like, oh, I didn't know. And then she's like, I've walked with her. I miss her, and I see her, whatever. And she goes, so she graduated 25 years ago with my mom, and I gotta go. And Patricia's like, where are you going? She's like, I gotta go. I'm sorry. I just gotta run. And Bree's like, bye. And she's like, oh my gosh. And then while Bree's like running, because she's trying to get back to where the Legendborns are, she's trying to get back to Lodge, she sees the statue of Carr, and she knows what Carr has done. And she's like, she's so angry, and she's like pissed. She's like, oh my God, this is real life.
Didn't she like push it? She's like,
yeah, she just walks up to it and she pushes it. And she's like, I don't know, that didn't really do anything. But she says she felt stronger, and she felt like she could do what she can. But she also says this like really important thing, and I really just, Deven can tell you, there's just a block of highlighted text on my thing. And she's thinking, and she goes, she thinks back on the Wall of Ages and its lines and the mixture of disconnection and frustration she had felt when she stared at it. And then, from the monument's place of honor at the top of Carolina's campus, I look back on the school's buildings and manicured lawns and brick walkways. I let my gaze draw lines there, too. From building to building, from tree to tree, from buried lives to beaten ones, from blood stolen to blood hidden. I map this terrain's sins, the invisible and the many, and hold them close. Because even if the pain of those sins take my breath away, that pain feels like belonging, and ignoring it after all I just witnessed would be lost. And then she says that she claims those bodies whose names she was taught to forget, and I claim the unsung bloodlines that soak the ground beneath my feet, because I just know that if they could, they would claim me. And one snaps, Tracy Deonn went off with that line.
She did. She really went through it. I was glad.
I was shook, but it was also like, yeah, like exactly. She and then she pushes on Carr's thing. And remember, in a previous episode that you could listen to, I talked about slavery in North Carolina. And yeah, this is kind of like a demonstration of that. Like, those people that we still honor were definitely slave owners. So Bree runs to the lodge, and the first thing she does is like, I need to talk to Nick. And they're like, don't you remember Nick is not here? He definitely went to go have a meeting with somebody else. He's definitely in the northern chapter. He's gone. And she's like, dang, well then I need to talk to William. And she runs up to William. What did she say to William?
Because I don't want to jump too far ahead. There we go. Okay, so did she just come out with it? Yeah.
Yeah,
she's like, Sella's a demon.
That's a whole demon, man.
She said that I saw his eyes. Like, I know he's evil born.
She's like, that's why I can't hear his feet. He is a demon. And William is like, hold on. He's our Merlin. Like, slow down. And he's a Kingsman. She's like, nah, that's a demon. And he's like, well,
yes, but no.
But no.
Yeah.
And he's like, technically, he is a Shadowborn. He's a demon. She's like, but he's a part demon. Because he's like, don't get all mad, because I know how you girls like to tussle. But he's a part demon. He's not a full demon. And she's like, how can you trust him? And then he's like, look, all Merlins are half demon. Every single one of them. Merlin himself included. And the way it works, he's like, Merlin blood, just a drop of Merlin blood will break any Punnett square. It always rules out in the blood, in like characteristics. You're always gonna, so his mom was a Merlin and his dad was a human. And his mom was a succubus, basically. So yeah, so she's like, William, I just need to talk about this. And so he goes, okay, think about this. Way back when, in the 6th century, Merlin's mom fell in love with an incubus and got a cambion, which is part human, part demon. And then you circle all the way down. Boom. Every single Merlin is a descendant of Merlin and is part demon. That's just how it works. And that's why, like, you don't need a Legendborn Awakening spell to wake them. They just know who they are. It will all, just a single drop is all you need to make a Merlin. Yes. So they all have these different things. They have like eye color, unnatural beauty, distinctive voice, even if it's passive. So it's like 1 minute you're taking blood work. I'm not going to read that. Anyway, he basically like they're very enchanting. And yeah. And she's like, are they not evil? And William's like, nah, he's just high strung.
Yeah, he's annoying.
He's just annoying.
Just part of the sex demon.
Yeah, he's got enhanced metabolism, speed, vision, and then boom, Sel busts in the door. He's like, I can hear y'all talking about me. And then Selwyn and Bree get into it. Like, they are busting. Because, of course, they do. And William's like, Sel, you need to chill. And then Sel looks at Bree. He's like, you are definitely snooping about me. And she's like, no, I'm not. And then she goes, well, leave me alone, Crossroads child. Yeah, like, she was going
Bree just becomes a colonizer in this part. And I'm not
so funny.
Angry about it. Like,
she was like, are you throwing a temper, Crossroads?
Yeah, you called me a demon this whole time only for you to be half demon.
It was crazy. So then he was like, William's like, you got to remember your... Oh, wait, no. William's like, you got to remember your oath, dude. You can't fight her. And he's like, my oath is to the king, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. So, like we mentioned last time, Bree has a date with Nick. It's not really a date, though, because all of them are going to be there. But all of the Legendborn are there. But they go to a bar. Mind you, our Brianna is 16. Mm-hmm. Nick is 17. Mm-hmm. They got old girl a fake ID that says she's 25.
And the fact that it works.
6 inches shorter than she is and wears glasses. And it works.
It says so much about the state of affairs we live in.
Like, it says a lot. Like, so much. So, if you're a child... Don't hear. They try to get her a drink, and they're like, "Oh, take a gin tonic. It tastes like a Sprite." And she's like, "No, I don't think I could do that."
Because it definitely doesn't.
Deven is 21. Anyway, so while they're sitting there waiting for Nick, she's got her hair done up and it's got her like her afro on, and both Greer and Felicity try to touch her hair, and she's like, "Whoa."
No, not try. They stick their hands in there. She's like, can you back off?
Can you not do that? And they're like, oh, we didn't realize. And she's like, well, now you know, so don't do that. And then boom, Nick and Sel walk in. And she's trying to get Nick alone because she wants to talk to him about stuff. And Selwyn's like, I don't know.
Stay away, demon.
Sel just keeps like staring at her and like won't let her get Nick alone. And then so she finally like takes him outside and she's like, I need to talk to you about like the table being reunited, like what's going on. And then boom, Selwyn's there again. He's like, hey, I'm about to pull rank. He's like, I want you to try. And Nick is like, you leave us alone. Someone's like, I'm in charge. You can't boss me
your dad
around.
Left me in charge.
Like, so. Definitely did. I'm here. He's like, the Shadowborn warned you. I can't leave you alone. And she's like, dang, well, I won't do anything with that. And I think definitely Nick kisses her. And it's like, aw, she likes it when Nick kisses her. They're cute. Ugh. Devin's looking at me like, whatever, Exquisite. Whatever, Exquisite. So then he brings up she brings up that she knows another ether user, but she doesn't say what it's called because she's like keeping them safe and low profile. That's not in order. So she's not going to like tell him or anything. And then she's like, did you know Selwyn's a demon? He's like, yeah, but he's bound by oaths. Don't worry about it. And then she's like, how did I know you're going to figure it out? She's like, because I'm clever. And he's like, yeah, you're clever. All right. Anyway. So then she's like, he's like, I've heard of dark casting, and we get back into the line of Morgaine, who are like, we haven't seen them yet.
Yeah.
But we just know they're evil Merlins, apparently.
They're rogue Merlins.
Roguish. And she's like, dude, I saw a vision of people chanting and pouring demon blood on the ground. And he's like, it could have been the line of Morgaine. And she's like, and then hellhounds came out.
Yeah.
And they attacked. And he's like, well, there must be like, they'll be written down. And she's like, maybe this is like we can find out what happened and see if they like hunted down my mom or whatever. And then he's like, and he's like, the only way I can talk about the regents is if I am fully called Arthur. If Arthur calls me, then I take control of the whole order. But if I get called by Arthur, we know what that means. Camlin. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, yeah, we don't want that. So then she's like, so what do you want me to do? She's like, what do you want, Bree? And she's like, I just want them to be punished. He's like, how? And she doesn't know the answer. Or maybe she just doesn't want to know the answer. Like,
she doesn't want to say it. she's feeling her Katara moment.
She is actually definitely feeling her Katara moment. I feel like I could write like a comparison to Katara if you really want to get into it.
I just made a PowerPoint presentation on Katara, so you can
word, yeah. The Katara tangent. But I mean, they kind of are very similar in different ways. The only difference is Katara didn't have to hide her. Yes, she did. She just didn't know how to use them.
No, because they literally came hunting for her.
This is true. Her mom definitely had to hide her powers when she was killed. She was like, and she was young when she lost her mom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the difference is at least Katara had another sibling.
Who she acted as the mom for.
Yeah,
so,
but let's not get into that.
No.
Anyway, that's a whole can of worms. That's a different podcast.
It is.
It's not a literary podcast, even though, anyway. So, yeah. So now we're on to the second trial. Flashback to the first trial. That was when the snake had showed up after they had fought the, like, fake hellhounds to like, just run. And all you need to do... It was
like the boars.
Yeah. So, this second trial is essentially... It is a scavenger hunt. 100%. Not even essentially a scavenger hunt. Mm-hmm. They're looking for these items that Cell has enchanted and the other Legendborn have hid around campus. And they just gave them a bunch of written clues. And so they're like, okay, pagelings, y'all have to be followed by a Legendborn with you. They're not going to help you, but they'll just be with you. And you're all going to get paired up. And so Bree is watching people get paired up. And she's like, oh, yeah. She's like, oh, I'm going to get Nick. And then Nick gets somebody else. Nick, so she's like, she thinks she's either going to get Pete or Nick. There's her, Pete is another scion of Owain. He's whatever. He's there.
Yeah. Basically,
he's just there. And so she's like, okay. So Pete picks, somebody else. Tor assigns Pete to somebody else. So she's like, okay, I'm going to get Nick. Yeah. And then Selwyn's like, actually, I'm going to get you. And Nick, you need to stay in the house. Mm-hmm. Because you need to be protected. And he's kind of got a point. Because every time Nick leaves the lodge, dude is getting smacked around.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, you think he hadn't been training all his life, if we're being real. So, you know what? He's got a point. I agree with him. Nick needs to stay behind. But it's like, Selwyn, why would you team up with Bree? Like,
we all know why. Because he's so...
Well, we're about to get into why, actually. We're about to get into why he wants to team up with Bree. But basically, the rules are, there are 40 objects hidden. And they're all enchanted. And you want to collect as many as possible. But the more you collect... the more the hellhounds that Selwyn enchanted will find you. Mm-hmm. And if you get maimed, or if you don't collect enough, you're out. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. You're just out of the competition, right? And it's like fine. And so Cell is like watching Bree as she attempts to find these. He's kind of laughing at her. He's like, yo, you need to find them pretty fast. Like, dude. Yeah. And Bree is smart. She's figuring out these clues. Mm-hmm. She, like, knows what she's doing. She's figuring out these clues. She's like, whatever. And Cell is kind of, like, staring at her. And she's like, she asks him, like, where are the hounds? He's like, I created them. I can feel them, but I'm not going to tell you. Yeah. Like, I'm not helping you. And all the time, he's needling her. He's, like, throwing these little barbs at her. And she's like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on. And then And then he kind of corners her. This is the part where he corners her. He corners her, so it's just them, and she's like, "Whoa, why? She has to go to a graveyard for one of the objects, and he jumps down in front of her and is all like, "You're immune to mesmer." And she's like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "Yeah, you are. Don't lie to me." And then he's like, I know that you have sight and you didn't just recently receive it because I can tell when my own powers don't get taken. I know you remember seeing the Isel in the quarry at the beginning of the book. He's like, and he's saying all this. And then he says, I know you enthralled Nicholas. And it's like, whoa. Oh. She's like, how, what are you talking about? And he's like, all of this in your appearances, and then you show up, and then boom, the demons are crossing through gates, the table is about to gather, and I think you have something to do with it. And she's like, you just hate Nick. And Cell's like, nah, Nick and his petty childhood drama and daddy issues have nothing to do with the Order's mission. He was just preparing himself for the call instead of whining about it. And he's like, oh, whatever. And then she's like, it's because the Order stole his mom. And she's like, she tried to kidnap him, and that was wrong. And the line is law. Like, Cell is very into, like, the line being law. I wonder why. So then she hears a growling, and she just has to run. And she's like, Cell? And she hears a growling, and she's running.
Yeah, she's
and
gone.
It's definitely, like, Cell's hellhound, like, that's, like, chasing her. And Cell is egging them on, like, hey, get her.
Yeah.
Like, and she's, like, running. And then she realizes, as she's running away, that Cell has set her up. And the hellhound is on top of her. When it catches her and it's on top of her, she's like, Cell, you need to call it off. Get it away from me.
Yeah, before it attacks me. It's not gonna kill her, but it'll do damage.
Yeah. And she's like, you set me up. And he's like, of course I set you up. Why else would I partner with you? Mm-hmm. And he was like, we've been playing cat and mouse too long. You need to give up your ruse. And he's like, I'm tired of you being a Shadowborn lying, which is real. That's some real thing, considering he's a Shadowborn. Like, let's be real. Like, anyway, he's like, I'm sick of your lying and all that stuff. And she's like, that's not me. That's not true. And he's like, you're lying. You're not really here for the actual mission.
Which is true.
And it is true. It is true. She's not here for that. She's got other plans. And she's like, if Nick is called to the throne, you're going to make a fool of him. And William, Felicity, Russ, and Sarah, they all know you don't belong. Like, they all think that you're one of us, but they know you're not. Like, he's basically getting at all her insecurity. He's digging deep because man's doing. And she's like, Nick was right. All Merlins are demons. You're a monster. And then they hear a sound in the woods. And she's like, did you call reinforcements? He's like, no.
No. I think Cell says that, doesn't he? He's like...
Yeah, Cell asked her, did you call reinforcements?
He's like, did you summon your monsters? And it's the fact that Cell anticipated this. Because he was like, there's only one way I'm going to stop, and that's if you kill me.
Uh-huh.
And then these monsters shows up, and he's like, oh, wait, are you actually going to try to kill me? If she was trying to, you'd be dead.
For real. And so he's like, so all of a sudden these foxes pop up, and they're kind of scary. Like, imagine a fox and then give it 20 more teeth and, like, make it stink or whatever. Yeah. Just be, like, scary. Like, it's a partial corporal, like, creature. And he's like, call it off. And Bree's like, I didn't do it. And Cell's like, call it off. And she's like, but it wasn't, I didn't do it. And then he realizes that she couldn't have done it. And so he starts to trying to fight them with his own ether. And he realizes that the foxes are... Well, he doesn't realize it. Bree realizes.
I was about to say, we find out.
Yeah, we along with Bree.
He's not intelligent because he summons his weapons, his like staffs or whatever, and he's like about to beat these foxes to death. They like howl, and that absorbs the energy. So then he summons his weapons.
He does it again and again. And it's like in those language.
I'm sorry. He's like, stop. Like, give it a rest. Like, it's not gonna work.
No, like, it's literally that. And so Bree's like, dude, you need to stop. It's like in those movies where they have, like, the monsters from space and the cops keep shooting at it. It's like, you see that this is a giant old transformer. You see that your bullets are not doing anything. Why do you keep shooting? And so Bree is like, oh, no. What's going on? You need to stop. And so finally it stops. And she's like, what do we do? And so it's like, we just gotta run. We run. We run. And so Bree definitely, like, so they come to this, like, clearing area Bree passes out because she's always passing out.
Every time. She's
always passing out. And you know what? Good for her. I mean, she's being carried around by hot men. Let her pass out.
That's like her thing. Yeah.
It's her thing. But she's no, like, fainting Daisy or whatever. So anyway, she passes out once, and he drags her to this area, and there's an underground, like, tunnel, and he reveals the tunnel and pulls her through, and she passes out again. She's always passing out. Anyway, so she wakes up, and she's like, what's going on? He's like, be quiet. And she's like, what? She's like, be quiet, because the foxes are going over them.
They're looking for them.
He's like, well, we should be fine, because once the foxes grab a scent, they're just going to be... She's like, what do they start digging? He's like, they're not going to dig. Don't worry. Like, I covered it up with magic. Yeah. They're going to search for us. And then she's like, why aren't you, like, being rude to me? He's like, oh, you're nothing to me. Like...
Yeah, he's like, okay, I can gather that you're not antagonistic, so it's whatever.
And she's like, this whole time, you've been trying to kill me. And he's like, thought you were a demon. Now that I know you're not, you're kind of uninteresting. Like, no, I don't know.
He's so full of it. Because if he thought she was a demon and he knew she could break his mesmer, like, he would have been like, oh, she's a high-class demon. He would have reported her immediately. Cell was bored. That had to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he was bored. He was so bored. Oh, I completely forgot something before they even go into a wall. She definitely burst into flames.
Oh, absolutely.
Cell saw it.
He's like,
what? Anyway, so he's like, I know you were cooking either like a furnace or whatever from your chest, but you don't know how to navigate tunnels, and unless you know how to work it, and you're not on flame right now, so you don't know how to work it.
Right.
We just gotta go. Come on, let's go. And so she follows him down, and they're like talking about different things, and he's like, look, Bree, you defy all the laws of ether, but you're uninteresting. So
he's like, as long as you're not a danger to Nick, I don't care.
I don't care about you. And it's like, oh, he's so not telling the truth. Like, I don't know. He wants her. Anyway, and so she tells Cell everything. Even Nick doesn't know that she burns.
Right.
But she's like, well, Cell saw it, so I'm just telling. And so she's like, I need to understand the things I see and why I see them. And she pushed him to sponsor me. And she's like, well, you're both fools then. Like, y'all are dumb. And he's like, well, yeah. So,
pretty much.
Yeah, it's acceptable. And basically the whole scene while they're underground is them, like, going back and forth. They spend a lot of time together underground. And it's being like 30 minutes. So he's like, she's like, you need to leave. The order, don't break the code of secrecy because you care for Nicholas, and if you do break the code of secrecy, you're gonna make his life harder, and you won't do that because you love him. Right. So I have nothing to worry about for you right now. And then she's like really stomping her feet that he doesn't care about anymore. Like, she's mad. And he's like, oh, you're self-centered. It's like,
she is, but
a little bit, but she deserves to. She is the main character. Like, she thinks she's the main character, and she actually is. So they come out, and the foxes are back, and they've got to fight them. But Cell is wise this time and knows he can't use ether, so he like leaves to go get like a metal weapon. And Bree once again bursts into flames, and she punches the fox.
Through the fox.
She punches right through it, like her hand is through it,
like,
and she passes out again.
Well, no, at first she's looking at it like, what's going on? Like, why is my hand in this thing?
Yeah.
And, the magic is protecting her because, when they're, like, I don't want to say the innards, but, like, the creatures, their, like, essence is, like, corrosive.
Yeah.
So the fire is protecting her.
It's, like, eating all the flames off, like, burning it off. And so when she comes to, and when she blacks out this time, our girl, she may black out, but she will wake up. She wakes up, like, 5 minutes later.
And to be fair, this one's, like, a panic blackout.
Yeah, she, like, blacked out, and she's still on fire, and she's screaming. And Cell's like, you need to pull your fist out. You can't, it will not explode into dust until you take your hand out of it. It won't explode around, like, organic materials. And she's like, I can't. And Cell, like, actually gets really gentle with her. He's like, just calm down. You need to close your hand and pull it out. I will do the rest for you. And I was like, oh, like, come on. Anyway, Deven is looking at me like I'm crazy. So then she gets her hand out, and it bursts into, like, little ashes, and she's like, it's gone. And Cell's like, they're gone. You're okay. And she's like, they are gone, but I am not okay. Because she's figuring out what she can do.
So traumatized that she
My poor girl. And then we realize people are yelling for Bree and Cell. They're yelling their names, and she's like, what's wrong? And then Cell looks at Tor and is like, are you awakened? And Tor definitely was called by her name. Glow. She's got that awakened glow. She's going super fast. She's speeding. And then they look around and they're like, is that Shadowborn dust? And boom, Nick pops up.
There you go.
And he's like, Tor's awakened. There's Shadowborn dust. Bree and Cell have been missing for a while. And he's like trying to put 2 and 2 together. And he's like, Bree, are you okay? You look a mess. Like, there's green stuff in her hair. And she's like, And then they're like, wait, those piles are green. Cell's hellhounds are definitely blue. Mm-hmm. So what's happened? And then Cell is nervous, and he's like, oh, there was hell foxes. They're fully materialized. We had to fight them. And he was like, 3 working together? That doesn't make any sense. And then they're like, Cell, you can sense Shadowborn from a mile away. Mm-hmm. What was going on? He was like, I was distracted. And Nick gets all up in arms. He's like, Distracted by
participating
what?
In foolishness.
Doing what? And he was being foolish, and Nick has put 2 and 2 together, and he was like, I thought she was a demon.
The Cell will die. And he's
like,
on
so
that
now
hill.
You're thinking like a demon? And he's like, that's my job. And then he looks at Nick, and he's like, the first demon that came out here wanted you. Mm-hmm. And now she's there. So he was like, I decided to just accelerate it, see what happened. And Nick was like, what'd you do? He's like, what did you do? I wrote a huge spoiler on my page. Okay. Just don't look at my book till I change the page. Because I have my book of notes here, and Deven hasn't finished reading the last book, and I wrote a giant spoiler. Okay. Like, that's so bad, and I covered it up really quick, so we're good. Okay. Anyway, so Cell is like, well, I definitely, like tried to get in front of her, you know. And he goes, I could have called the hound off her at any moment. Yeah. And Nick reaches back and punches Selwyn right in the face. Mm-hmm. And Selwyn is just kind of like, that's not fair. You know I can't hit you back. And Nick goes, precisely. And Bree steps back and is like, what?
Colonizers participating in colonizer behavior.
And it felt really weird for her that Nick would hit somebody who he knows cannot fight back at all. Like, he abused his power in that instant. And then Cell's just like, oh, wow, that kind of hurt. But guess what? You don't have Arthur's strength yet. Imagine the damage you could do when you're awakened. And then he's like, you wanted to defy me, blah, blah, blah. And he gets real scared. He starts sounding like his dad. Mm-hmm. And then she's like, but also he's not wrong.
At all.
I'm not a threat to Nick, and Cell did deserve that punch. It's
Cell literally summoned demons on her, which was an abuse of his power as her guide.
Yeah. Like, and then Nick is like, whether I have Excalibur or not, called or not, if you try anything like this again. He's like, do you understand me? And then he puts him in his place. And I'm like, Cell deserves it. You could have put him in his place without punching him. Like, you didn't have to put your hands on him.
It added the flavor.
It did add a little spice. And he's like, do you understand me, King's Mage? And Cell's like, yeah, my liege. And then blah, blah, blah. And so, boom, the King Mage is back. And they kind of, and she is over here, like, complaining about being hurt. And so we get back, and she's complaining about being hurt to William. Because William is her go-to to complain about being hurt to. Because we love William. William is great. And they start talking about who can date who or whatever. And it's really awkward conversation for Bree. Because he's like, you don't really want to date inside bloodlines. Yeah. That will mix too much things up. Because we need to know who the power is going to. So you do not do that. That's very important. You don't mix bloodlines in order. It's banned. They will kill the child.
Absolutely.
Like, that's not what you want to do. So he's like, I don't date in the order. I date outside the order. But you can.
Like, you have a strong bond with the person you get, with your,
The person, if you are a page and you get picked and you become a squire for a Legendborn, you have this, like, super strong bond. And he's like, it'd be awkward if you broke up and you're still bonded together for
But
life.
It's also, like, if you date someone else, you're never going to have the same level of connection.
Mm-hmm. So it's an awful thing. Yeah. And you're going to die early. So really.
Only if you get the abatement from awakening.
You don't get the bond unless you have the abatement.
That's fair.
So Nick is like, we gotta do some things, and she feels weird about Nick, but she's like, is what Cell's doing bad? He's like, no. And she hasn't told Nick the full story. She doesn't know, like, what's going on. Like, she hasn't told him, like, the fact that she can burn into flames. And she just still hasn't told him. And so she kind of explains to the whole group, like, what happened with the foxes. And they're kind of scared because they're like, it stole the ether out of Cell's hand.
Possible.
That's not normal. That's suspicious. And he's like, they're growing stronger. So Nick is like, I got to talk to my dad. Mm-hmm. Like, I need to talk to my father. So they're like, oh, we're all exhausted and all that stuff. Yeah, so he says he's going to call his dad, and he's like, let me drive you home. And so they go, and they leave. But Bree's like, she feels weird.
She does.
Everything's feeling weird. And I mean, she
After
should.
that night, yeah.
Because she was like, she can't really talk to Nick about how she feels about how he'll lead his kingdom and treat his king's mage, or what makes a person a monster. But, you know, it's kind of it's distressing for her. It's distressing. So it's Saturday, and she goes to sleep. She sleeps in, and she gets a message from Tor, and she's like, hey, we're having dinner at 5. You need to come promptly. Because guess what? We're about to train. Because guess what trial 3 is? Fighting. And Bree is like, dang it. I've never fought in the first place. But, so she gets a text. She's like, okay, I know I got to do this. And so she gets a text message from Patricia, who's like, hey, can we meet in the afternoon? And she's like, yeah, we can meet in the afternoon. Yes, let's do this. And then she gets a text from Nick, and it's like, hey, what you doing? And he's like, she's like, I'm about to get lunch. You want to come? He's like, no, I got to meet with my dad, which is
very serious.
So she meets with Patricia, and Patricia's like, I've got somebody I want you to meet. And her name is, what's her name? Mariah,
Miss Carrie.
And Mariah's another black girl, and she's a practitioner. And she's a junior. And Bree, when she sees her, she gets a little envious because she's like, she learned it from her mom. Mm-hmm. I don't have that.
She got that little pain.
It's hurtful for her. And, you know, it do be hurtful. Like, I can't. So, anyway, they meet. And then she shakes her hand, and Mariah immediately goes, oh, my God. Death knows you so well.
A wonderful way to introduce
And Bree's like, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And she's like, my bad. I'm a medium. I talk to dead people all the time. And she's like, you talk to dead people? And then she asks her about joining the black student movement and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, she's like, oh, yeah, I do need to meet some black kids. Like, I can't just be hanging around all these. Like, it's not good for me. She's like, her dad told her she needed a community.
She does.
And she does. She can't just do this anymore. So she talks to her, and she's like, when I said that you, like, death knows you well, I just meant you're so young to be so acquainted with it. And she's like, yeah.
Pretty much.
A little bit.
That's what happens when you lose a parent.
Which is, it's hurtful, but it is. So then Patricia's like, hey, I'm very glad I thought about what you told me about the order, and I'm glad you know to keep yourself a secret. She's like, Rootcrafters, we are all very accustomed to having to hide our powers, and we know how to be invisible. And she's also like, we know what the order does to outsiders who have power, and we know how they take them away, lock them up, or do worse. And Bree's like, I didn't tell the order about you. And she's like, I knew you wouldn't. And she's like, yeah. So I don't even know why you want to hang out with the good old boys club. It sounds like it's super exhausting. Like, I don't know why you want to be there. And Bree's like, yeah. She's kind of right, but I have to. But she says this thing about hanging out with Mariah and Patricia, and she's like, I haven't been around black people in months. And she said it's been months since she's held space with just black women particularly. And she says it's not only safe, but it's like a release.
It's calming.
Yeah, and she really feels it, you know? And she tells him about the memory that she discovered and all that good stuff. Like, she tells him everything. She's like, yeah, this happened and this happened. And Mariah's like, oh my goodness. She's like, how can you do this? The only thing she doesn't tell them is that she can burst in flames. She tries to keep that from everybody, as she should. And then she does tell them this, and they're like, so you can just cook it, you can just see it. Oh wait, no, she doesn't tell them that she can turn to flame, but they ask her how she can do it. How can she resist their hypnosis?
Right. And
how she can see the color of ether and smell it and stuff. And they're like, if you didn't ask for it, that means someone in your lineage bound the power to you. Mm-hmm. Like, they connected it to you. And she's like, what? Does that mean I'm a blood crafter? I didn't ask for this. And she's like, that's why I asked Mariah. Mariah can help you connect to your ancestors, and we could figure out what's going on. And then there's this line, and it says, Patricia touches Bree's knee and says, love is a powerful thing, more powerful than blood, although both run through us like a river. She may answer you, but if she does not, she still loves you. Speaking about her mother. Like, she's like, you may not be able to talk to your mom, but she still loves you, and that's not why. But when Mariah touches Bree to try and get contact with her, she's like, there are just so many. She's like, you need to focus on your love for your grandparents. You need to see all that. And Bree is just overcome with so much grief. And Patricia's like, you need to breathe, Bree. Come on. And then she's like, I don't listen. All I can think of is loss. The loss of my mother, my mother's mother, my mother's loss of hers. And she didn't tell Patricia that her great-grandmother died before her mom was born, too. None of them had ever met their grandmothers. Right. And Mariah feels this. And she's like, there's just wells of life. And they're deep, but they're so separated. And they're all tied off from one another. And then Bree goes, it's because death breaks our connections. Death separates us from one another, and yet it holds us close. As deeply as we hate it, it loves us more. And I'm getting chills just like, like just thinking about that line. And Bree can't do it. Like, she just thinks about all that she's lost, and she just gets up and she runs away.
Literally.
Like, she gets up and she runs away. And yeah. She's like, she just takes a nap. She goes and takes a nap because she can't handle it.
She hasn't passed out in a minute. So.
Yeah, she's past her. So she goes to the training rooms. She has dinner with them. She goes to the training room, and they start trying to train her. Oh, and God. Y'all, it does not go well.
Bree gets put on the floor.
Bree gets beat down because you guys have to understand. Brianna, as good as she is at running and passing out, my girl's not trained in fighting. And the rest of these kids have been trained their whole life. Mm-hmm. And Bree does not even have that. And so Nick had arranged for her to be trained by this woman named Jillian, who had trained Nick. And after their first training session, she's like, hey, how was it? And Jillian's like, well, she's about as good as you were when you were like 6. And that's it. So she kind of sees Cell, and Cell's all mad, and she wants to be mad too. And Cell comes down and just kind of like demonstrates the type of fighting they're going to do, and he beats up on people, and then he leaves. And then so that whole night, like, they fight. She gets beat down. She gets brought home, and she just has a dream about. She's dreaming about, like, her mother and all these different things in her family. And then she's got to go back to the order. And Nick is not there this time. But she's training, and she sucks.
Oh, yeah.
She sucks bad. And so, once again, she gets another call from Patricia. And they talk. And, well, Patricia doesn't call her. Patricia just shows up. And she's like, Bree.
You ran away.
I don't typically do this. But she's like, Bree, you're suffering from a lot. And she's like, isn't that what grief is? And she's like, I think you're suffering from traumatic grief now. And if you don't stop, it's going to develop into persistent complex bereavement disorder. She's like, think of your panic attacks, like your anger, your distrust, and her obsession with the circumstances of the death and her inability to live forward. And she's like, therapy can only help you if you want to be helped by the ghosts that are haunting you. Mm-hmm. And she says, she's like, I think we finally hit your ghost when we were with Mariah. And she's like, my ghost? And she says, an emotional ghost is a moment, an event, or even a person that hovers over us no matter how far we run to escape it. And she's like, yeah, my mom died. Easy. And she's like, Bree, do you know how to locate a patient's ghost? And Bree's like, how? She's like, you look at what they don't talk about. And she's like, well, I always talk about my mom. And she's like, no. You talk about your mom's death. You don't talk about your mom. You never talk about your mother.
That part.
And she's like, you might talk about her death. You don't talk about her life. And that's a symptom of the type of grief she's experiencing. And it's an inability to process that a person is more than just their absence. That love itself is more than just a loss. And she's like, she isn't lost. Okay? And she gets mad. She's like, because once again, Bree hates when people tell her that her mother's lost. And she's like, look, you aren't ready for it. And Rootcraft is all about healing and protection. But she's like, I don't think you want those things. She's like, I think you want vengeance.
You do.
And Bree's like, I do. She says it in her head. And then she goes, why someone dies is not the same question as why they are gone. Right? And she's like, I know, but vengeance will make me feel better. She's like, what? What's going to make you feel better? Are you sure about that? And then she goes, I don't think this is going to work.
She's like, I cannot, like,
I
take you down this path in good faith.
And she's like, are you breaking up with, like, she gets dumped by her therapist. And Bree's like, what? And Patricia's like, I'll call your dad, and he can get you set up with another therapist. And she's like, you just need to be, she's like, I can't endorse what you're doing with the order. I can't do any of that. She's like, I fear for you, Bree, and I'm upset about the path that you've assigned yourself. She's like, and even those order people, they may, like, fight monsters, but they are not protectors. And she goes, it's because they've stolen their root. That's what Bree says. And Patricia's like, we borrow root because keeping it in our living bodies creates an imbalance of energy. We call Bloodcraft a curse because power taken and not returned incurs a debt, and the universe and the dead will always come to collect one way or another. And we know this because, once again, the abatement. And she knows, she goes, do you know how large their debt is? And do you know how they pay it? Because the only currency that Bloodcraft accepts is suffering and death. And they've had it for 15 centuries. That's all the lifespans that have been cut short, all of that. And then when you think about it, Bree, we know, is, for someone in her family, did Bloodcraft.
Yeah.
And think of all the grandmothers that they never had to see. Like, it's the payment that's been demanded. And it's upsetting. So anyway, so Patricia leaves and she's all haunted by Patricia's thoughts. And boom, she's got to go back to training, right? And it's the night before the actual trial. And Nick is not there to watch, but Sel's there to watch this time. And she is getting beat down. And they're like, dude. And Nick tells her, he's like, you don't have to win. You just have to lose good.
Gracefully.
Lose gracefully. And they're all telling her, like, you don't have any stamina. Like, girl, you're not going to win.
You're not going to last seconds. Like, and they're not wrong.
And she's fighting with her good pal Greer, and Greer's, like, trying not to beat her too bad. They're trying to help Bree, and it's not working. And so finally at the night, Selwyn's finally like, dude.
I've had enough.
I've had enough.
I'm
sick of bullies. I will help you. And so she gets some training from Selwyn. Like, they train together. And he calls, you can't see it, but Deven definitely just rolled his eyes at me. Because when Selwyn offers to train her, he's like, I will train you, silly thing. And she's like, I thought you called me Brianna. Like, why are you calling me silly thing? And he's like, stop stalling. Come on. Get up. Put your shoes on. We're about to fight. And he basically gives her some things. He's like, you're tall. You need to use that. And it's a combat trial. And Nick's back, but Nick has got to respond to her. And whenever she sees Nick, she always says this thing about call and response. It's very, like, we get it a lot. Like, she's like, we call and respond to each other a lot. She's like, we're connected, whatever. And Nick is like telling her, hey, calm down. She's like, hey, don't tell me to be calm. Are you stupid? Like, don't do that. And he's like, let me just be there for you. And he hands her the key to his bedroom.
Oh, my God.
And she's like, oh, my God, I just got a boy's bedroom key. She's like, we don't have to do anything. And then Bree gets all flustered. And he's like, what were you thinking about? She's like, what kind of not talking are you talking about? So she goes into the fight, and she remembers, like, Selwyn had told her, you just need to use your stuff to your advantage, right? And who was the first person she fought?
Was the first one? Oh my God, what was her name? It was the girl she was partnered with the first time.
Yeah, it was Sydney. Yeah. And she respects Sydney, because she's like, Sydney's just trying to win.
She was like, Sydney.
And Sydney wins very quickly because she pushes Bree out of bounds. So, boom, she gets it. And so then she's got to fight Blake, who is just like, he tries to scare her, and she's like, I'm not scared of you. Sel's more scarier than you. Like, come on, let's be real. And she just keeps blocking him until finally she's like looking at Blake's, how broad he is, and she manages to get him on the mat, and she wins the match. It's like, everybody's shocked.
Everybody's like, wait a minute.
They're like, how did she just win? And Sel's just like pleased. Sel was very pleased. So then she has to fight Vaughn, and we know Vaughn as the one who called her basically like, he was like, what did he say? What did he say about her?
It was akin to ghetto trash.
He called her that, and he also said that she was only here because of
affirmative action.
He basically called her an affirmative action baby. So they are fighting and they're going at it, and Vaughn's trying to like fight, tease her or whatever. He's like, while they're fighting, he's toying with her.
Yeah.
And she's like, whatever. And she remembers Selwyn telling her, you need to use your anger. He's like, the difference between you and the rest of the legend, like the wannabe Legendborn and the pages that you're fighting, is that they all have a purpose here. You aren't using your purpose. You're not using your anger in order to work in your favor. So she definitely fights him, and she gets him down because she gets angry and she uses it and she gets him down. And everybody's jumping up and cheering. Boom. So they're like, yes, match to Matthew. She got it, or whatever. And she's looking at Nick, and she turns around. She looks at Nick, and their eyes lock. And then Nick's eyes widen because Vaughn has gotten up and took his sword and hit Bree on the collarbone. Like a deep crack.
He has absolute sneak attack. Just
sneak attack. And she passes out again. This time it is not her fault.
I was going to say, this time it's from pain. It's a good reaction.
It's not my girl's fault. She didn't mean to pass out. And so she wakes up before William's done healing her, and they put her back to sleep. And they heal her, and she's like, you've got a clean oblique fracture in your clavicle. Girl, you're in pain. He tells her, go back to sleep. Nick wanted to say, I told him to get out. Go to sleep. This is what William has told her. And she's like, sorry, William. I gotta go see my man.
Let me go check up
on him. It's Bree, come on. Anyway. So Tor and Sarah are bonded now because Selwyn has finally had time to do their oath bond together. So Sarah finally gets the powers that Tor have. And she hears Selwyn cutting up a ruckus, losing his mind in the forest. And she's like, Nick is taking his dad to the airport.
Yeah, they're doing something right now.
He's going to be gone for 2 hours. Let me go check on Selwyn. Because when I was down bad, Selwyn came and checked on me. Even though Nick told her to leave Selwyn alone.
He did. He said both of y'all stay away from each other. And they
both won't stop.
They won't.
So she gets to Selwyn, and she's propelled by a force out of her control. And she's like, why are you so angry? And he's like, did you learn that from your therapist? And he goes, whoa. And then she's like, wait. What do you mean did I learn that from my therapist? And Bree is mad.
Of course.
And it turns out Selwyn has definitely been stalking her. Mm-hmm. And he listened in on her therapy session. He's like, I don't care about your mommy issues. I only wanted to see if you were meeting anybody about things. And technically, yeah. But it's also Sel, did you have to stay and listen to him? What's wrong with you?
Because what's really crazy is that he had to have overheard them talking about Rootcraft, and as King's Mage, still didn't do his job.
He didn't do his job.
I'm like,
the man was not doing anything he was supposed to be doing. And then he basically said, he's like, I don't care about your dead mom who used ether to grow flowers. And she's like, don't talk about my mom.
She's like,
he's like, you know what? This is a waste of my time. I'm gonna leave. And he's like, you're trying to remember what I overheard that day about your stupid, boring, basic life. And she's like, and then Sel, he's like, how could I risk so much about a lost little girl who probably needs as much therapy as I do? Because Sel is such a, he needs therapy.
He does.
And then he goes, I bet Nick told you that we fought again and that Lord Davis put me in my place on the phone. Because he did.
He did.
And he basically told him that he was going to, he was like, you got to listen to the king. I will strip you of your powers and your title. And if you're devolving to the blood, because Merlins have to be oathed or else they think they'll go crazy and become evil. And he goes, and you'll be the first person in a millennia who will be stripped of your thing. And he's like, I can't hurt you anyway, because you know what Nick would do if I hurt you? And she's like, no. He's like, you really don't know how Nick feels about you? Dude, kill me. You should have seen what he did to Vaughn.
Oh my God.
He kicked that man all the way out. And so anyway, he's like, I'm not going to succumb to the blood. And then, it's when Merlin made that huge spell, he also did this, when he made the spell that made the Legendborn, he also did it for himself so that, his descendants would become the Merlins, right? But he knew that demons tend to care only about themselves in chaos, so he made a little insurance that as long as they're oathed, that won't happen. That's why they tend to say the line of Morgana is evil, because they're no longer oathed, and they don't have access to the powers. But then Bree kind of has a memory, and she goes, What you mean strip Merlin? And she remembers that in the wall of their like since she remembers she'd seen a marble had been scratched out, and she's like, what's this about? And then so she's like, he tells her we're 2 called signs away from Camlin, even though he take my title and all that stuff, because we can't afford to have a Merlin who's on the loose. And so she's like, Nick thinks I'm losing my humanity. I need your help. And she follows him, and Cell runs away. She follows him again. Mm-hmm. She follows him and she's like, can I come in? He's like, go away. And he doesn't have a shirt on. She's like, put on a shirt. She's
put on the shirt, sex demon.
Put on the shirt, sex demon. And then she looks at Cell and she goes, you're not the first Merlin I've ever met, and you're not the first Mesmer I've resisted. And Cell's like, whoa. And so finally she tells Selwyn everything, like absolutely everything, like why she's there. She doesn't tell him about Patricia and her ancestors, but she tells him everything else. And she tells him about the Wall of Ages, and she's like, there's got to be files. And he's like, I don't know why I never considered this before. I'm gonna take you somewhere. And so there's a Twilight reference in the book where he grabs her and they jump out the window. And he's like, put me down. She's like, put me down. He's like, I can run faster than you. We got to get here before Nick gets here. And she's like, well, let me ride on your back. And he's like in Twilight? Like in the movie? Oh my God. And he kind of go back. And if you hear me, Twilight is that's my movie. I was so excited to hear it. It's my 2 favorite things. Leave me alone, Deven. And he takes her to the house where him and Nick grew up. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, okay, we're in this house now. And they're looking for things. He's like, hey, stop rifling around your boyfriend's stuff. I know you want it. And she feels guilty because she's like, I should be doing this with Nick. Like, I don't know why they didn't think about going through his dad's files. How many times? How long has his dad been away?
Since when was Nick smart is the real question.
Deven is a hater.
I'm just saying.
And then he looks at her and he says, hey, do you feel something when I look at you? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, explain. She's like, I can't explain it. It just, when you look at me, I can feel, especially when you're mad, it feels prickly. We don't have an explanation for this either. But he's like, okay.
He's like, that's interesting.
Interesting. I see. So they go inside and they're snooping, and she's like, until once again, it's like, you don't have time to snoop around your boyfriend's stuff. And then, like, as they're looking, Cell finally has like a moment of vulnerability, and he's like, you're good for him. It's like,
he does.
What you mean? And he's like, Nick has always been self-righteous, but now he has a focus. You showed up, and he doesn't care about his dad anymore. He cares about what you think. And she goes, and he's like, oh, Nick doesn't care about what his father thinks. He just wanted to avoid Arthur. That's why he left. He's like, I've known him since we were babies. Like, come on. He hates his dad. But he wants every kid who has problems like that wants to prove their worth to their father. And he's like, one parent left and the other stayed. You want the one that stays to love you. Like, your dad stayed. He's like, his mother didn't leave him. She was taken. He's like, but his mother did leave him because she knew. She knew what would happen. And like, she wanted to protect him, but she knew what would happen. And then Cell breaks his own mom issues. He's like, well, my mom died when I was young. She was killed by a nuke on the mission. And after that, my human father fell into a liquor bottle and never came out. And so they moved him in. They moved him with the Merlin so he could train, and then told him he was going to be a King's Mage. And that's how he met Nick. And he was like, over time, he was the super obedient one. And then over time, jealousy and all that stuff sunk into their relationship, and anger. And then anger became resentment. And she's like, for both of you? And he's like, yeah. And it's just like that. And then he goes, I thought Nicholas was amazing. He was everything I wasn't. Bright, open, popular, heroic. He made it all look so easy, still does. I want to be close to that. And it's probably why I fell in love with him. And everything pauses. Everything pauses. And then Nick is like, Cell's like, I was 13, chill. chill. And then he dates around. Like, he also definitely dated Tor. Like,
yeah, he gets
and
around.
Bree's like kind of taken aback, but she's like, okay.
She's like, what?
Remember, Cell is part sex demon.
I'm like, Bree, this makes perfect
sense. But then he's like, chill. Everyone falls in love with Nick. He's like, it's the Arthur in him. Like, you can't. He literally says it's his insufferable charm. So anyway, we're about to get into some real crazy stuff.
Oh my gosh.
They finally go and they're digging around, and they find a letter. And Cell is reading the letter. And then she's like, this is it. And then Selwyn starts reading aloud. And basically, the letter is saying that on Friday, March 31st, a Merlin alerted the Scions of Gawain and Boars that there was partial materialized demons about. There's a word there, but I don't speak Welsh, so I'm not going to say it. And then later, they find out a large gate was open and that a bunch of people were involved. There were students killed, and there were also students that had seen it. There were 15 that had survived. And so he said our Merlins mesmered them and then gave them false memories, and then we held them there in the lodge so that they had to replace. So a mesmered memory, when you replace them, they have to be replaced with memories of equal weight or it won't work. So with the help of the regents and the intending Merlins, the witnesses were filed away, successfully measured, and sent off. And then he reads, I discovered that our Merlin and King's Mage, and then Selwyn stops. He stops talking. Now, mind you, the King's Mage is the person that is oath to the king, so this would have been the person that was oath to Nick's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he stops, and he's like, I can't keep reading it. And he hands it to Bree, and he goes, Bree, you need to read it.
Oh, my God.
So their Merlin and King's Mage, Natasha Kane. What's Selwyn's last name? Kane. That was his mom. Turns out she opened the gates herself using an arcane ritual and demon blood that she procured specifically because of its strength and ability to open gates of that size. King's Mage Kane gave no reason for her abominable behavior and denied the investigation's finding at every turn. In hindsight, perhaps we should have considered the possibility of her involvement. Boom, boom, boom. Basically, goes on to say that they took her and they locked her away and then took her son and said that he would be raised with the order. But she hadn't had a son yet. He wasn't born yet.
Right.
They said they secured her away in a heavily warded prison, and if she would have a child, then
it would belong to the order.
So they just told told Cell that his mom had died and his dad was drunk. That's not what happened
at all.
We know somehow she got pregnant, and they locked her away, and they scratched her name away from the King's Mage post and put in Isaac Sorensen, who is the new Merlin, who's the new King's Mage Merlin for their era. So that's what happened to his mom. And then they had some ad minimums. 5 years from the incident, Natasha has exhibited several years of stability. She'll be released under probation. Didn't happen. She definitely had a relapse of the blood system. 12 years from the incident. That's what they say. And the High Council of Regents have removed her from service and put her back in containment. And they moved her son to North Carolina to be monitored and taken. And then Bree looks up and Cell is like losing his mind.
Of course.
And she's like, and then she says, I'd never considered that the loss of someone else's mother would be so connected to losing my own, or that the loss would go hand in hand with death, destruction, and a horrifying fate. Nick's mother, Cell's mine. How many mothers had the order taken? So our trio is a trio of motherless children with serious mommy issues.
The mommy issues abundant. The daddy
mommy
issues too, in connection.
Abundant. Now, our good Bree has no daddy issues.
Remember she was struggling to deal with his grief?
Yeah, but it wasn't daddy issues. She just couldn't touch it. She loves her dad.
Okay.
Tracy was like, I gave her a lot to deal with. She's not going to have daddy issues too. Thanks, Miss Dion. Anyway, so she says she realizes that a grief like hers is crashing down on Selwyn, and she cannot watch it. And he's like, and she feels so guilty because she's like, I pushed him to find this out. But in one hand, it's like, it's not really your fault. He probably was always going to end up finding out somewhere. He needed to know what happened to his mom. But it's just, both were not expecting it. And then he looks at her and he's like, you called me a monster once. And she's like, I didn't mean that. And he's like, maybe you're right. I mean, look at what I came from. Like, it's such an intense moment of both of them are just like, sharing this like pain, and he goes, well, she's alive, but she's not dead.
Yeah,
she just
like
locked away. And then he goes, well, we need to keep going and find out what happened to your mom. And so they find the files, and they go through, and they're looking up at all these checkups of her mother, and she sees a picture, and she's like, I'd almost forgotten what my mom looked like. And it's like one of those moments, and Sel's like, well, what does the file say? And it says, witness 11, Faye Ayola Carter. She's 19. She's a sophomore. And a bio major and a chemistry minor. And she's like, Sel's like, that sounds painful. And she's like, she's a scientist. Like, she's proud of her mom.
That's what she wanted.
So she like reads up, and she's like, oh, her mom was a witness, and they do check-ins, and they're dated check-ins. May 1995, she was an undergraduate. They talked about her. When probed, she didn't remember any of the attacks. And then she's looking at all the check-in, and they've been keeping tabs on her mom for years. And then May 13th, 2020, at 9:18 a.m. in Bentonville County Hospital, North Carolina, because she sees something terrible, and she's reading it. Miss Carter was killed in a hit and run near her home at 8:47 p.m. last night, May 12th. I was alerted to her death by a vassal working in the local police department. In order to confirm Mrs. Carter's death, I assumed the identity of an officer. She leaves behind a husband, Edwin Matthews, and a teenage daughter. As recorded in the enclosed logs, Ms. Carter has never shown any evidence of her memory returning or the knowledge of the incidents. As such, she has not, in the past or currently, given cause to pursue the containment steps. This is the final entry on Witness 11's profile. And Bree cannot deal with this information.
It breaks her.
Sel holds up a picture, and he goes, is this the Merlin you saw? And it is the Merlin she saw. She like nods, and she's like, well, I know. And she realizes her mom was not murdered by the Merlin. Her mom genuinely did just die in a hit and run. And she's like trying to get away. She's like, everything is so wrong. It's just all so wrong, and it's so much. And she's like, Bree, we still don't know why you can see out there, why you can resist illusion. If the mesmer didn't work on you, maybe it didn't work on your mom. And she's like, I already thought about that. And he's like, okay, and she's like, don't you get it? She was smart. She did what I should have done, and she ran and she hid, and she kept herself very hidden. And she would pretend with her friends when the science detected her that she didn't know anything. And she made sure this world couldn't find her. And she hid it from me like she was supposed to. And Bree's like panicking. She's like, I'm just so selfish that I had to come here and dig. And she's like, she didn't want me to find the order because she didn't want me to become your target. And I did it anyway. And then she looks at Sel and she says the most heartbreaking thing. She's like, if I can't have her, I don't want to remember her. And Sel was like, I cannot do that.
Because she was like, Sel mesmer me. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that.
And she's like, why? And he's like, one, a memory that strong needs a memory to replace it that's equal weight. And I'm not powerful enough to do this. But you don't want to not know your mom. And she's like sobbing and like breaking down. And Sel's like, come on, let me bring you home. And he's like, leave me out. She's like, leave me alone. And Sel's like, you can't walk home alone. And then they're standing downstairs in the foyer. And it opens the door, and she turns around, and boom, Nick's there. And Nick is looking at her, tears in her face. And she looks at Sel, and he thinks Sel's done something. He's like, what is happening? And Bree's like, she's not talking. And Sel's like, I didn't do anything.
Right.
Not that you'll believe me.
Of course.
But he's like, I didn't do it. And then Nick looks at her and is like, why are you crying? And she's like, I just need to go home. And then she looks at Felicity and is like, Felicity, can you drive me home? And Nick is like, I can drive you home. She's like, no, I can't. Felicity, please drive me home. And then she's like, Russ, go get my car. So he's leaving to go get a car. And Nick is like pleading with her, like, Bree. And Sel's like, you need to let her go. And then she looks at Nick and is like, it was just an accident. And then that he doesn't understand at first, and he thinks Sel did something.
Right.
And she's like, no, it's not that. He's like, my mom, the car that night in the hospital, it was all just an accident. And Nick understands. He's like, how did you? And he goes, with him? Like, Nick is hurt.
You went. This was our thing.
This was our thing, and you went with Selwyn, which I understand he's hurt, but Nick, that's not what we should be focusing on right now. And Bree's like, I just can't do this. It was all a mistake. And Nick is like yelling, and she's like, I just can't be here anymore. And Nick is like, wait, please, I need you. And this is his words. I need you. You have to know I'd choose you. I'd want you, Bree. If Camlin is coming, I want you. And then Bree's like, no, you don't. And then it leaves. And that's the end of part 3, Rootcraft.
Not you being sad.
I'm so in distress about it. Like, you know I was in distress. Like,
I'm sorry. It was given pick me, choose me, love me.
From Nick.
I was like, come on, Meredith Grey. Let's give it a rest.
Stop. So you don't understand. Nick had finally met someone who he understood. And then Cell had finally met someone who understood. Like, anyway, so that's the end of that. And Bree is just so hurt.
She is.
And that's the end of part 3. Part 4 picks up right there. I feel like my 2 episodes before the episode breakdown for part 4 may need to look a little different. Because let me tell y'all, part 4 is ooh my God. But we'll see. You'll know what the episodes are about when we get to them. But yes. Thank you again, Deven, for joining us.
Of course.
Deven may be back to explain part 4. We'll see. He may be back.
If it's as good as you say, and I've read a little bit into it. It's nice. We're gonna see if she sticks the landing.
Listen to me, Deven, and listen to me, all the people who are out there listening to me in your cars and stuff. This book is like, you're like, oh, this is a good book. It's like a solid 3.5 stars. A solid, like, maybe even a good 4 out of 5. You read part 4, which is called Splinter, by the way. Splinter, come on. You read part 4, and it jumps to a 10 out of 5. It jumps to a million out of 5.
It does. It starts off very strong.
It goes nuts. Anyway, but we're not there yet. Y'all will find out what happens in part 4 within 2-3 more weeks. In 3 weeks, we'll have a part 4 breakdown. But yes, anyway. Deven, where can we find you if the audience wants to find out more about what you're doing and all that stuff?
Okay, so, I'm on Instagram, I guess. I don't post it. I might post. I might do something. But it's Deven.ir. I stand by it is a Spanish conjugation. It is to become, which
I literally was like, IR, ear, is to be. To become, to be, whatever, same thing. But yes, you can.
No, I mean Deveneer. Like I put the dot there just because it's
Deveneer,
the whole thing.
Deveneer. Okay, yeah. Why didn't you say that?
I did.
Thought you were talking about IR,
no.
like just the IR. You're like Deven to be, like that works too. Technically, it works.
I mean that's
that
good.
Works. It's good.
But
anyway.
to become is just
Do you see it? Do you hear this? He's really like arguing with me. I'm the Spanish speaker here.
I took 4 levels of Spanish.
Whatever.
I'm pretty good. I'm on the Miss Obama becoming. But here we go. All right.
Yes. So you can find Deven there. You can follow me at Exquisite Williams on pretty much everything. On Instagram, I'm at Exquisite Williams. On YouTube, I'm at Exquisite Williams. If you're listening on YouTube, do the whole like, comment, and subscribe to help me out in the algorithm. Comment. What are you excited to see what's about to happen? Like, what are you excited to hear about next? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Do you have any theories, Deven? What's one of your theories?
I know someone's gonna die. I just don't know who.
This book has been dealing too much in death to not kill somebody off.
You know the media I watch. Someone's going.
Yeah, I mean, Deven is into The Walking Dead. Anyway, you can follow me on Twitter at Exquisite WIL, and you can follow the Our Moment Podcast on Twitter at Our Moment Pod. Thank you guys so much for listening. Once again, thank you, Deven, for joining me again.
It was a pleasure.
Yes, and when we get into part 4, that's all I'm gonna say. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. And have a nice one. Bye, guys. Say bye, Deven.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. No, I'm just saying the ways. All right, bye, y'all.